"What an artist dies in me."
These were Nero's last words, according to Suetonius, uttered just before Nero plunged his dagger into his throat. News of Nero's death reached Rome's citizens, many of them crowding the streets in jubilation, only to look back upon Nero and his rule with nostalgia. This begs the question, was Nero a good emperor? Well, one could argue he wasn't too much of an emperor during his first 5 years, what with his mom predominantly calling the shots, but just in general, no. In fact, he was one of the worst. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus was born to Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus and Agrippina the Younger in 37 AD. After Lucius's father died when he was only 2, his mother Agrippina married Pacinus Crispus. Pacinus Crispus died of poison, most likely from Agrippina of course, in 49 AD, and shortly after his death, Agrippina married her uncle, Emperor Claudius. A year later, Claudius was convinced by Agrippina to formally adopt Lucius, an action that provoked a name change. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus was given his new name at just 13 years old. 3 years later, in 53 AD, Nero married Claudius's daughter Octavia. And just another year later, Claudius died from poisoned mushrooms, I wonder where those came from, leaving Nero to take the throne. But Renaissance rewind, you say? Claudius already had a son, Britannicus, so why did Nero take the throne? Well there, learned viewer, I say to you that Nero was 2 years older and won favor over the then 14 Britannicus, pushing Claudius's only legitimate son out of the spotlight. Upon his ascension, Nero buried Claudius with the utmost pomp and magnificence, pronouncing the funeral oration himself, and then had him enrolled amongst the gods. Nero hosted many games, stage plays, and even an exhibition of gladiators during the early part of his reign. Many prizes were given out by way of lottery, including gold, silver, slaves, pearls, tamed beasts, ships, and last but certainly not least, lots of land and houses. On February 11th, 55 AD, just 3 or 4 months into Nero's rule, Britannicus was poisoned the night before his 14th birthday. During the days leading up to his death, Nero SA'd Britannicus. This is the first written case of Nero using SA to assert his dominance, but it certainly won't be the last. Nero left both private and public matters to his mother. Agrippina, already being the overbearing mother that she was, gladly took advantage of this, doing everything in her power to put Nero, and of course herself, in advantageous positions, but she wasn't Nero's only advisor. The Stoic philosopher Seneca and the prefect Burrus also advised Nero. Seneca was actually the one who pointed out to Nero that his mother was slowly taking more and more control. Nero obviously didn't want this to continue, so he started plotting. There are multiple motives for Agrippina's murder, but we can't be certain which one, if not all, made Nero commit the crime. One motive is of course her domineering attitude towards Nero probably ticked him off a bit. A second motive would be that Agrippina started finding, or rather grooming, candidates to be the next emperor of Rome. One journal article reads, among these, referring to the potential alternative candidates for the throne, was the young Aulus Plautius, whom he, referring to Nero, forcibly defiled before his death, saying, "Let my mother come now and kiss my successor," openly charging that Agrippina had loved Plautius and that this had roused him to hopes of the throne. Motive number 3! Nero wanted to marry Poppaea Sabina, but Agrippina wouldn't let him. In my amateur opinion, this is the least likely of all three because Poppaea was supposedly the daughter of Tiberius, therefore noble-born, and the only thing stopping Nero from marrying her was Claudius's daughter Octavia. But Nero was having an affair with Poppaea while married to Octavia and had gotten Poppaea pregnant. Agrippina hardly approved, so maybe Nero was getting rid of his nagging mother. Must she go on and on about loyalty and the various diseases? I think the Encyclopedia Britannica article says it best. He was led to the murder of Agrippina by her insanity and her fury at seeing her son slip out of her control. So that was it. Nero was getting rid of Agrippina. First, he had a contraption made that would make the ceiling above Agrippina's bed collapse and crush her. When this didn't work, he had a boat made that was designed to sink, causing Agrippina to drown. When this didn't work, Nero stabbed her to death. Very anticlimactic, if you ask me. Agrippina died in 59 AD, and the next 9 years of Nero's rule will be his worst. Now, Nero always had a taste for performing. He'd enter competitions, and starting in 60 AD, he gave public, albeit unwanted, performances. While Nero was playing his lyre for just about anyone who'd listen, Queen Boudica had raised a rebellion in Albion. In 62 AD, Nero sent his wife into exile and had her executed. He then married Poppaea, whose husband and future emperor, Otho, was sent away by the emperor's orders to the edges of the empire. The baby that Poppaea was pregnant with died shortly after their marriage, and their second child's fate was also doomed. It's July 19th, 64 AD, and Rome is on fire. Nero watches from his palace. Pulling out his lyre, he starts singing. The blaze lasts for 6 days and destroys 10 out of the 14 districts. Hundreds are dead, thousands homeless, and the city is being picked apart by looters. No one today can say who started the fire. Of course, Nero is a suspect, mainly because he exhausted the treasury to rebuild Rome and build a 100-acre palace featuring a lake, exotic animals, a golden ceiling, and a 100-foot-tall statue of himself named the Colossus Neronis. But in 64 AD, the Christians and Jews were persecuted for the disaster. To quote another article, the history article to be exact, whatever responsibility he actually bore for the disaster, Nero deflected attention by blaming members of the fledgling Christian religion for the fire. He ordered all manner of creative and brutal persecutions. Some were condemned to be dressed in animal skins and be torn apart by dogs, while others were burned to death in nighttime pyres that provided light for the emperor's garden parties. In 65 AD, Nero discovers a plot to assassinate and replace him with Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Among the 18 out of 41 killed in retaliation was Seneca, who had been retired for 3 years, leaving his advisor position after Burrus's death in 62. In the summer of 65, Nero kicked the pregnant Poppaea Sabina in the stomach, killing her and the unborn child. After this murder, Nero first asked his stepsister Antonia to marry him. When she said no, he had her executed on a trumped-up charge. Nero decided to take a tour of Greece, leaving Rome at the end of 66. During his tour, he found a teenage boy named Sporus who had a resemblance to Poppaea Sabina. Nero took Sporus and forcibly defiled him for 18 months. Maybe even had him castrated before marrying him in 67 AD with all of the usual ceremony as if Sporus was female. Sporus then became Nero's fourth wife. Nero had married Statilia Messalina in 66 AD after the death of Poppaea, and they were still married when Nero married Sporus. Nero had also married a free man, Pythagoras, during Saturnalia in 64 AD, and in this marriage, Pythagoras was the husband and Nero was the wife, and Nero went through all of the typical ceremony while still married to Poppaea. So to clarify, in 67 AD, Nero was married to Pythagoras, Statilia Messalina, and Sporus. After 15 months of touring Greece, where he performed in multiple shows as pregnant women, women in general, and slaves, along with participating in the chariot races in the Greek Olympics, obviously he won gold, he came back to Rome in February of 68. Nero was welcomed by revolts in Gaul and unrest in North Africa and Spain. Governor Galba declared himself legate of the Senate and Roman people, and was soon backed by the Senate, Praetorian Guards, and the Gallic and Spanish legions, who all declared Nero an enemy of the state. Nero fled, but didn't get far, and on June 9th, 68 AD, Nero cried, "What an artist dies in me," just before plunging his dagger in his throat. The year that followed Nero's death was the notorious Year of the Four Emperors. After Nero had died, Sporus, who had fled Rome with Nero, was taken by Nymphidius Sabinus, a praetorian prefect who also treated him as a wife and called him Poppaea. After Nymphidius was killed, and, quoting the History Extra article, by his own soldiers as he bid to be made emperor, Otho, the second of the four emperors of 69 AD, took Sporus. If you remember, Otho was Poppaea Sabinus' second husband, who Nero sent away to marry Poppaea. Vitellius then became emperor, and Sporus was passed down to him. Vitellius had planned to use Sporus to reenact the defiling of Proserpina in the gladiatorial arena, but Sporus, obviously not wanting to take part in this disgusting event, took his own life. I just thought I should include Sporus' ending here, because it's really sad that he was subjected to this torturous lifestyle at such a young age. Nero's death brought an end to the 95-year-long Julio-Claudian dynasty, and when he died, his memory was deliberately erased, his images destroyed or reworked by the Roman practice of damnatio memoriae, or the damnation of memory. If one good thing should be said about Nero, it's that Rome was built back better after the fire. The streets were wider, buildings were made of brick rather than tufa and timber, and colonnades were built at street level to shelter people from the harsh Italian sun. But these improvements do not take away the evil things Nero did. So what do you think? Was Nero the worst emperor? I don't know too much about the other bad emperors. I can't be too sure about my opinion, but Nero is pretty terrible. He was very, very evil. I don't know. You let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, I have a couple of shorts. I have a short about Saturnalia, if you would like to learn more about the Roman Christmas. And I do have a short about the Roman invasion of Britain, which also includes the Boudica Rebellion, if you would like to learn a tiny bit more about that. I should create a whole video about that. But anyway, if you did like this, though, make sure to like and subscribe. I want to start doing more long-form videos, and I do try to post a short at least every other day. So, thank you very much for watching.